Welcome back to Conflict of Interest. Tonight our guest is Denise Cameron, who is the President of Pro-Life Victoria. Denise, welcome.
Thank you, Peter.
And I'd like to start off with a proposition to you to get your comments. In my view, this whole issue of abortion is really a matter of an individual's personal ethics or religious point of view. In other words, there's no absolute right or wrong. It's just each person has their own ethical position. What do you say about that?
Oh, I think generally it's agreed that killing is wrong, is objectively wrong. And of course every abortion kills a baby. That's the very simple story. I must say my reaction to listening to the two of you before was men do make things very complicated. You seem to paint the position of the opponents of abortion as sort of a little bit akin to fanaticism if we didn't just accept a little bit of abortion. But our position is based on science, and it's based on the humanity of the unborn child. So it would be discriminatory, and you would probably be the first to argue if we said, well, it was all right to kill an unborn baby in this case, but not in that case. So that what was I going to say then? Sorry, I've lost my track there.
Let me put it,
yes.
Aren't you begging the question in the sense that the whole point of this is the unborn child is not a person, law has no legal rights, and that's one of the fundamental problems that I raised. I mean, you're not killing a human being as the law stands at the moment.
Well, the law has, it doesn't mean to say that the law is right on those things. You will recall once upon a time that the law said it was all right to own slaves.
Yeah, look, the law's only right sometimes, not always.
Yes, so that's a legal position. There are philosophical positions, there's theological positions, but the pro-life movement has only ever been based on the scientific position, and that is that human life begins at conception. I read an article in the Courier Times some years ago written by Greg here, and I considered it quite bizarre that I've got a copy of it here, where he told us that in a book titled, well, naturally, The Defence for Abortion, that a David Boonen said you could really only measure the rights of an unborn child at some complicated, I mean, I'm a nurse, but even I can't remember what it was, some cortical response, which in other words provided a baby with the desire to be born. Only then did the unborn child have a right to be born. Well, I am old enough to remember Mr. Barnes here when his impending arrival, when his arrival in the world and was impending.
You knew his mother.
We all rejoiced.
That's right.
Let me tell you, I remember being thrilled when I heard that Mr. and Mrs. Barnes were going to have a baby.
Well, you're now saying that was an error.
No, at that time. No one at that time.
I mean, it sounds like an argument in favour of abortion.
There's always hope. There's always hope, Peter. And no, let me finish that. We were thrilled, and at no time did we wonder whether or not it was a baby and decide that, well, only if he has a desire to live is it a baby. A 5-year-old, does a 5-year-old have a desire to live? I'd suggest not. A 5-year-old wouldn't understand death. So that's nonsense.
Well, that may not be the test.
That humanity is tied up with a desire to be born.
Let's look at the Victorian, what's happening here in Victoria this week. We've got a bill going through do you think it'll go through the Parliament, Denise? What's your view on? It's got to get through both houses. It's a conscience vote. What's your pro-life say?
Well, we don't have much hope in the lower house because it's been infiltrated by Emily's listers, and
Emily's listers, just for our viewers, is a Labor Party.
Yes, I'll tell them, Greg, what they are. Emily's listers are. Emily's List was founded in America, and it was adopted here by Joan Kerner and Mary Delahunty were the co-founders of it. And in order to be a member of Emily's List, which is within the Labor Party, and it was to help women get pre-selected. But it's a very discriminatory list. You can only be a member of Emily's list if you are pro-abortion.
And you're a hard lefty.
And I would suggest that the early feminists would be spinning in their graves today. People like Susan B. Anthony, who was one of the earliest suffragettes, she had some even harsher words to say about abortion.
But let's get back to Victoria, which...
Yes.
So you don't think you're going to win it in the lower house?
Not in the lower house.
What do you think about the upper house?
I don't know. Many a slip twixt a cup and the lips, and the lip, isn't that the expression? Politicians are known to change their views between their office and the floor of the Parliament. And I notice that there is a string of politicians, including Ted Baillieu, my own member Carlo Carli, Helen Shardy, Tim Holding, all went to the electorate in 2002 promising that they were opposed to the decriminalisation of abortion. The Herald Sun did a survey of them in 2002. They reported on it on November, and there's a whole string of politicians there who promised the electorate that they would vote against the decriminalisation of abortion.
How do they get around that? They must have an explanation for that.
Well, there's 6 years have gone, and there's been no discovery in that time to prove anything.
No, but what do they say? How do they get around?
I don't know. I'll have to listen to them in Parliament, won't I?
Denise, the argument, the common argument, and you would have heard this a million times, but the common argument that is run in relation to abortion is the extreme cases, rape, incest, etc. Even some anti-abortionists in the US carve out that exemption, and here too in Australia. Do you see that as having any substance at all, philosophically or ideologically?
Well, it's not related to the current issue at all, and I just do want to point out to you, or the current bill before Parliament, I want to point out to you that you suggested that after 24 weeks it was going to be difficult to get an abortion. Not going to be difficult at all, Greg.
I think Peter was saying that.
Two abortionists can sign it. You can get Sally Ann Coburn and Louis Ruttman from the abortory.
We're just trying to pin you down.
Just on this issue, because there are,
on the issue of rape and incest.
Let's say a girl's raped,
yes,
she gets pregnant from the rapist.
More than happy to answer that.
What's your
this
answer
is
on
one
that?
of the oldest red herrings in the abortion debate.
Answer?
And the answer to it is, well, first of all, I think Greg and probably you, Peter, you would be totally opposed to capital punishment for a rapist. So I can't imagine why you want to put a child to death.
I'm not
necessarily opposed to capital punishment. I am, though, Denise.
Well, you most certainly are, like myself, Greg.
No.
First of all, we do not visit the sins of the father upon the child.
Yeah.
And having said that, I think that is the principal thing. But I could go on and tell you that to abort a woman who has been raped is yet another violation of her. And perhaps if I really put it into context for you.
She wants that violation.
Well, I'm sure that she would want that too in her distress at the time that it happens. There is evidence, though, that women who have gone ahead and had a baby as a result of rape, I'm thinking of a particular service in Ireland, I think, have made much greater progress in recovering from that rape than women who have had an abortion after rape. But may I really put it into a personal context for you?
We need to
I remember just a few years ago standing on a beautiful spring day in the Treasury Gardens there at one of our Freedom to be Born rallies. I was listening to a speech given. I just saw this young lady last Saturday at the rally again. A beautiful girl standing there with beautiful blonde hair, and she recounted her experience of rape and of pregnancy as a result of that rape. I felt physically sick when she went through the ordeal that she went, the terrible went through, the terrible nausea that she suffered, how she repeatedly made phone calls to the abortory to organise an abortion, and then she'd change her mind. While I was listening to her, I happened to look up into the face of a most beautiful blue-eyed blonde little girl who was being nursed, and I said to one of the participants in the rally, "Whose little girl is that?" And they nodded and said, "That is Yvette's little girl. I saw that little girl, now that big, on the steps of Parliament on last Saturday." And may I give you the beautiful words that Henry Hyde, that great Republican mate of yours, Greg, he once speaking here in Melbourne spoke of the much loved Ethel Waters, the Negro singer in America who was conceived as a result of rape, and she said, "My mother was raped in a ditch and today they're naming a park after me." In other words, we are inspired through life with people who overcome terrible obstacles. I'm a pretty ordinary person. I don't inspire people. I haven't overcome much. But well, those who do inspire us
you've certainly left us with a pretty clear message tonight. We've got to wrap it up. We've got to wrap up this segment. But we've been talking to Denise Cameron from Pro-Life Victoria. When we come back, Peter and I will sort of tease out some of the issues that Denise has raised.